The Detroit Pistons have been through a lot of pain over the past few years. Over the last 4 seasons, they've won an average of just 20 games. It did land them the number 1 overall pick in 2021, but they got kind of screwed by the lottery in the past couple years, being given the 5th pick in both years. But despite things not really going in their favor, the team has done a great job of accumulating talent, and it feels as if they're finally done tanking. They were looking to take somewhat of a leap last season, but with their best player in Cade Cunningham going down early in the year, they ended up spending another season towards the bottom. But with Cade coming back and an even more talented roster now, the team will be looking to make its first playoff berth since 2019. It's clear that winning is the goal for Detroit now. They hired Monty Williams to be their new head coach and gave him a massive 6-year, $78 million contract. Monty helped the Suns return to the upper echelon of the Western Conference, and even took them to the finals in 2021. They also traded for veterans with playoff experience in Joe Harris and Monte. The team is stacked with upside and talent, and they have one of the best young cores in the entire NBA. They have an emerging star and former number 1 overall pick in Cade Cunningham, returning all-rookie players in Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, one of the most underappreciated players in the league in Bojan Bogdanovic, and a do-it-all rookie in Ausar Thompson. The Pistons could be the Cavs or Kings of last season, as a young team that breaks through and jumps into the playoffs. The Detroit Pistons are about to shock the NBA. Now let's take a deeper look at why. Before we get into the underrated group in Detroit, if you enjoy my content and watch a few videos of mine, think about subscribing. 91% of my viewers are actually not subscribed, so if you watch it before and enjoy the content, drop a sub and comment down below. It really helps the channel. I've been high on the Pistons for a while now, dating back to before last season. I believe they would take the leap last season to becoming a play-in team in the East. However, with Cade Cunningham playing just 12 games, it meant that the team's hopes of making that leap were practically over. However, I'd say that this team has been better over the last couple seasons than their record suggests. Despite winning just 40 games over the past 2 seasons, a lot of Detroit's games have been very close, even against good competition. While they weren't good, they were competitive, which I think is a very important thing to note. So all they need to do to take a somewhat large leap is get a few points better, which I believe they'll do. The NBA seems to be deeper than any time I remember, and no team in the East will be directly tanking outside of the Wizards. Because of this, it's hard to directly predict that Detroit will be a playoff team, but I feel confident in saying that they will not be a bottom 3 team in the East anymore. They're going to surprise some people, and I believe they'll at least make the play-in, if not the playoffs. But doing that relies on the players, so let's look at the impact guys for Detroit. When talking about the Pistons, you have to start with their former number 1 overall pick, Cade Cunningham. After starting somewhat slow in his rookie year, he picked it up after the All-Star break and has looked like a young star ever since. He averaged 21 points, 7 assists, and 6 rebounds per game after that point in his rookie year, and he had a legitimate argument to win Rookie of the Year, but it went to Scottie Barnes instead. He picked it up at a similar pace to start last season as well, averaging 26 and 6 in the 12 games before his shin injury. Although he couldn't play on the court, he did spend the time working on his body and getting bigger and stronger so that he can bully smaller guards in the post, and it seems as if it paid off. Cade played with the US Select Team to help the national team prepare for the FIBA World Cup, and it was said that he was the biggest standout from camp. He played the Luka Doncic scout role and reportedly did it very well, hinting at a star breakout this season if used correctly. Devin Booker made his first All-Star game in Monty's first year in Phoenix, and I'd predict the same with Cade this year. Then I think we should shift to Bojan Bogdanovic, who was so underappreciated for how good he was last season. The man averaged 22 points per game on 49, 41, 88 shooting splits. It was an insane season for Bojan, and if the Pistons were competitive, he could have had a real all-star case. That's how special he was offensively. Now he'll shift back to the number 2 option behind Cade, and that's a role that he's used to. He averaged 20 points per game with the Jazz in 2020, and at best he was their second option behind Donovan Mitchell. He's a gifted scorer off ball and doesn't need the ball all the time to fill it up. The Pistons were very wise to keep him despite all the trade interest, because he can be a big piece in them overachieving this season. I assume he'll be their second best player. You could argue either of last year's lottery picks are the third best player on the team, but I'll start us off with center Jalen Duren. He was one of the youngest players in last year's draft class and is still just 19 years old. It'll be interesting to see exactly what his ceiling is as a scorer, but he was an immediate contributor both defensively and as a rebounder last season. He had 19 double-doubles as a rookie, which was second in the class behind only Walker Kessler, who had 20. Duren averaged 9 points and 9 rebounds per game last season and shot an impressive 65% from the field. He's a very high-end athlete and should really benefit from catching lobs from a passer like Cade. Some have compared him to a young Dwight Howard because of the body type and talent he has. It's a high ceiling to reach, but Duren is very talented. Then we should talk about Jaden Ivey. Most people viewed him as the fourth best prospect in last year's NBA draft, but the Pistons got him at 5, which they were obviously pleased by. Cade missing last season likely benefited Ivey more than anyone else, because it allowed him to be the lead guard for Detroit. He took advantage of it as well, averaging 16 points per game, third among rookies, 5 assists and 4 rebounds per game. The efficiency wasn't great, but I think that's to be expected when a rookie is placed in as big of a role offensively as Ivey was. His game is very reminiscent of that of Ja Morant, and he's said that he watches a ton of Ja film and models his game somewhat after that. He's a phenomenal athlete and a gifted scorer, which makes his ceiling very high. However, splitting touches with Cade could limit his upside to a certain extent. This year's number 5 overall pick, Ausar Thompson, will likely start at the 3 spot for Detroit and be an immediate impact contributor. Standing at 6'7", Ausar is probably a 90th percentile athlete among NBA guys and will enter as one of the league's most exciting players. He only heightened the excitement and anticipation surrounding him at his debut summer league, as he was arguably the most well-rounded player there. He was a dominant two-way player in Vegas. Ausar played 4 games during the summer league, and he filled the stat sheet, averaging roughly 14 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks per game, while shooting 46.5% from the field. It's hard to gauge how high his upside could even end up being. I'm also high on a couple other guys, and I'll start off with James Wiseman. The Warriors gave up on the former number 2 overall pick and traded him to Detroit at last season's deadline. He averaged 13 points, 8 rebounds, and a block per game with Detroit, as he was finally given a shot. The advanced analytics still really didn't like him, but the eye test tells you he was a positive presence. I think he's good. He also averaged 17 points and 11 rebounds in the Summer League, in kind of a Twin Towers lineup with him and Duren. Then I'm also high on Marcus Sasser as their Killian Hayes replacement and new third guard. He might not be the backup point guard right away due to Monte Morris, but he will be the long-term backup one. They took a chance on him with the 25th pick in this year's draft, and many people were surprised he went so high. However, he had arguably the best game in all of Summer League with a 40-piece where he looked like a star guard. I don't think he's going to steal either of Cade or Ivey's spots or anything, but he could end up being a really good scoring 6th man. So in terms of lineup, the starters should be Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Bogdanovic, and Duren. Then the second unit should be Monte Morris, Alec Burks, Joe Harris, Isaiah Stewart, and Wiseman. Then Sasser, Isaiah Livers, Marvin Bagley, and Killian Hayes should get some minutes as well. So what should we expect from the Pistons in 2024? On the low end, they could finish 11th or 12th in the Eastern Conference and just miss the play-in tournament. On the high end, they could finish somewhere in the 6 to 8 range in the East and have a strong chance of ending their playoff drought. Expect Cade Cunningham to make his first All-Star game this season, but it feels unlikely they'll have anyone else really be in the running. I'd like to see jumps from guys like Duren, Ivey, and Wiseman, and honestly we should see jumps from at least 2 of them. The veteran guys should make a really positive impact, and Monty should be a big help as well. The Pistons are going to be very fun regardless of wins, but I'd say they have a real shot to make the playoffs this season. But that will depend on if Cade plays like the star he can be. The Detroit Pistons are about to shock the NBA. Thanks for watching. I'm Herm. Have a good one.